ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have our first contested race of the evening. We're going to ask our candidates, Councilman Jerry Nickerson, to come forth, and also former council member Stephen Stanley, they will come forth and prepare so that we can get some fireworks going, because we've been serving up softballs. So we want to no, we want to get some fire going in here. So thank you guys so very, very much. And we're going to jump right in, and we're going to go from Mr. Nichols to Mr. Stanley. We're going to go ahead and ask Mr. Nichols for your opening statement, and then when we finish your opening statement, we'll have Councilman Stanley give us his opening statement as well.
Thank you. My name is Jerry Nickerson. I'm a councilman for District 3, and I'm finishing up my first 2-year term. Like some here, it was my first opportunity to serve in public office. I'd never run for an office before, and boy, I didn't know how much I didn't know, and how much I've also learned in that process. I'm a native Texan.
Councilman Nickerson.
Yes.
Let me apologize for interrupting you. I apologize, it's my error. I can't read. I need to go back to GISD. Can I ask you guys, I'm sorry, I got you guys out of order. We should be going. Okay, I apologize. So can we ask you guys to come back? We do have an agenda. If I'd have read it, the agenda, we've been okay. I do apologize. All right, I apologize.
I will yield since they are ready.
Oh,
I will yield.
okay. We good?
Both candidates in the
I'm sorry?
And the other races were?
Okay,
that was it.
Okay, I do apologize for that. If I could read the agenda and would read the agenda instead of look at the last one. Mr. Nichols, go ahead and start over, please, sir.
I'm gonna rewind. Okay. No, really, I won't repeat what I just said, but I would like to say that my wife and I moved here about in late 2000 or mid 2014. Had some folks that wanted to see if I would serve. I didn't know what all that really meant, but it has been quite an experience. I've really become really loved with the city of Garland. Its diversity, its geographic location, all is what attracted me here to it. My background is in engineering and construction and project management. I was the VP for facilities for Parkland Hospital Health System here in Dallas County for about 5 years. Prior to that, I worked in engineering and construction really all my career, all over the state here in Texas. And like some others, I came to council to serve and to serve the citizens. I felt that I could add value, given my background and my history, to that process and to the citizens. And that's really why I decided to run in that first time. And that's why, as your incumbent, I'm running for re-election today.
Thank you much, sir. Thank you. Councilman Stanley, your opening 1 minute, please.
Good evening. Thanks, President McNeil. Thanks for the Garland and NAACP to hold this event yet again. I am Stephen Stanley. I have served in this capacity from 2013 to 2017, and due to some things that happened at the tornado of 2015, people had asked me if I would step forward and take it to another level. With Commissioner Cantrell retiring off the Commissioner's Court, I did make a run for the Commissioner's Court. I did well in Garland, Saxony, and Rowlett, but you know, it covered a 900,000 population, and we weren't successful in that. And I was happy going back into private life. As a Garland resident, born and raised here most of my life, I graduated from South Garland High School. You know, I still participated even after the loss of that commissioner's race. My wife is currently serving on the Parks Board. I'm on the Garland Symphony Board, Friends of the South Garland Board, the Exchange Club. You know, we're still heavily involved in the community. People said, you know, hey, you know.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much. All right. That's too much. We'll come back to that. All right, we're gonna have questions coming from our panelists. Start with Mr. Ellis. You have a question for our two candidates for District 2.
Yes. What will be your #1 priority if elected or reinstated?
We can go Mr. Stanley, then Mr. Nickerson.
#1 priority, part of my motto is bringing the public back into public service. Mainly, there's been a lot of things that's going on in the last couple of years There's a project going on out on Interstate 30, TxDOT wants to, and I do call it remove our exit for, Back Pro Drive, because if it's not where it is, where 240,000 people supported that Harbor Point going in, then, you know, the dynamic of that has changed. You know, we supplement that subdivision as it is. The exit is being relocated over to where Dow Rock is, Dow Rock being brought over to where, instead of getting on at Dow Rock now, those 20,000 cars a day are gonna be brought over, and where our off ramp is for Back Pro right now, it's now gonna be an on ramp for Dow Rock. I wanted to say that in place. I received a letter 2 days ago from the other owners, you know, there's 240,000 people that own part of that subdivision. The other owner of the land over there, he was never contacted by TxDOT to let him know that, you know, his investment in Garland and that subdivision was not even considered, and he along with others wanted to say.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nickerson.
Yes, things that I wanna do is to continue what I've been doing. I have, driven economic redevelopment into District 3. I have 9 active projects ongoing across District 3 that will bring, single-family homes, that will bring retail, that will bring a new hotel. And we have land banked, a piece of property at Rose Hill and I-30, which was part of the Catalyst study area, so that we could more control the kind of development that we would get there. I want development that will provide services to our citizens in South Garland and in District 3. And that's why I convinced the council to invest back into the district. First time they've invested, city's invested cash into South Garland in the last 15 years since the 2004 thing with Bass Pro. So my goal is to continue to try to drive redevelopment and bring more services to the citizens in South Garland and to improve our demographics and economics.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Johnson.
Well, I was gonna go with the, bond, but it's another question I think I'll go with. With the introduction base of business in Garland, what is your understanding of the city's preparedness in the event of a chemical spill or catastrophe?
We'll start with Mr. Nickerson.
Can you repeat the question?
With the introduction base of business in Garland, what is your understanding of the city preparedness in the event of a chemical spill or some other catastrophe?
That's an excellent question. We actually had an event in South Garland in District 3 when we had that power loss from the windstorm back in October, where GP&L, I think, quickly responded and got power and service back to most folks within 3 to 4 days. Emergency preparedness takes the right kinds of staff, and it takes the right kinds of resources, and they have to be ready and ready to go at a moment's notice. That does take funding and continuous oversight to make sure equipment and staff are trained and equipment is in order to respond. You also have to be able to manage the communication process and have a system in place so that you can reach out to the citizens and reach out to others for both support and help, but also to help manage the safety issues that might come along. And I think the city generally is in pretty good shape there, but we look all the time at how we would improve our preparedness programs and evaluate what we can and can't do, and I would be one to.
Thank you so much,
incorporate that.
Councilman.
Thank you.
Appreciate that much. Councilman Stanley.
Great question. We had, you know, going back to the actual question of, you know, from an industrial standpoint, what would happen? Are we prepared? We have had one of those incidents back in, I think it was 2010, 2011, over in the industrial area. There was a chemical explosion. We were extremely prepared for that. Our first responders are top notch when it comes to that. With our training facility here in Garland, they get constant training. The other thing that happened was the tornado of 2015. Nobody on the, you know, Mayor-elect LeMay was the only other councilman besides Councilman Williams this year that we were out there hand in hand with our first responders after the tornado. I was out there for 3 months working with these people day in and day out. Our first responders, they contained the affected area in less than 24 hours. The governor, you know, sent out the Texas Task Force 2 to actually inspect and make sure that there were no deaths in any of the structures in Garland. So we are extremely well prepared.
All right, and just a quick follow-up, that, just a 30-second response. regarding our nursing homes and our schools, what does that coordination look like? What would you see like that coordination to look like? You mentioned the tornado, which was great, and then also you mentioned the industrial spill out on Forest Lane. So if this situation happens, how do we evacuate our nursing homes and our schools, our people who are most vulnerable? We start with Councilman Stanley, and then with Councilman Nickerson.
Well, thankfully, our first responders, they know where all of these facilities are, but they also, besides just with the professional facilities that are the nursing homes or rehabilitation centers, they also know where the home health care places are as well. And in the event of a power outage or a natural disaster like a tornado, they know where to go and to actually evac, get in there and get these people out. If they have to, do any type of triage on scene, they know what the incident, what the people at that location need.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Yes, Councilman Nickerson.
Yes, I think that we need to take advantage of the ability of the school district and the city to work together in those kind of events. The school district has excellent facilities across the city that could be looked at and used for resources in case of a tornado or a tornadic event. We could triage and move people in from these areas that are damaged or without power. I think also our emergency responders are well prepared, as mentioned, they know the locations, but it takes continuous training, it takes continuous monitoring of our funding, and continuous upgrading of our facility.
Thank you so much. All right, this particular time we can come back to our audience. Are there questions from the audience? Are there questions from the audience? Give me a half second. We'll come across this way. But, yes, sir. Stand, give us your name. Then we'll come to. All right, yes, sir.
Since you both have served on council, how accessible are you to the citizens of Garland? How much do you listen to the citizens of Garland?
We'll start with Councilman Nickerson and come to Councilman Stanley.
That's a great question. I serve, and I serve for the citizens. That's who I listen to. I don't listen to others out there that are not with a mind of service. I reach out to the citizens where I can. I try to communicate as quickly as I can when I receive a call or an email. Certainly have I missed them? I'm sure I have. I can tell you this, I'm always listening and always listening to do better. I've since January 1st, I've actually handled 163 individual citizens' complaints and calls without missing one. So I'm always open for improvement, and I'm always ready and willing. That's why I'm here. That's why I was elected to serve, and I'm trying to listen all the time.
Thank you, Councilman Stanley.
Well, having being in the real estate industry, as part of, to me, that's almost like public service as well, because you deal with the public. My numbers, my emails have been published for 20+ years. If you need to ever get, the 4 years I was on council, and I still received a number, and I didn't keep track of everyone, but I've received a number of calls over the last 2 years as well, because they were not getting any kind of response, because people don't want to call City Hall, they hope to get a call later. I've always responded to all of my calls, my numbers published. My wife can tell you, I've actually answered the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning with constituent issues. As far as emails, I still got my old city iPad. I bought it when I left council. I always keep track no matter where I'm at. When all the stuff first started happening with Henrietta Miller in the Eastern Hills Country Club, and they said that they wanted to build 550 houses, I was communicating back with the residents in that area, and we set up a meeting as soon as I got back to let people know what was going on. So communication is one of the key things that my 4 years.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. All right, we'll come here again here. Yes, sir.
My question to both Councilman Nickerson, if you are re-elected, and former Councilman Stanley, if you are elected, what steps will you take in working with Mayor-elect LeMay and the rest of the council to get the 635 East project out of the red zone into the end zone? So many folks in South Garland have been asking me the question, and they thought they asked me to ask you all the question tonight.
Okay, well, 635 is proceeding on the schedule that TxDOT has set up. They are in the process now of finalizing the contract with the design builder. My role as the alternate on the RTC and my role as being on the Dallas Regional Mobility Council is I represent our city at both of these, and we are monitoring and tracking on both cases, Councilman Albin and myself for the RTC and at the DRMC, to make sure that the schedules go forth as planned. It's a design builder can deliver the project faster, so I agree with the delivery system and the delivery process, because you're taking steps out of the process, so it should be, and it will, if scheduled properly, will go faster in the long run. So we were in favor of that type of delivery process, and the RTC has voted that in, and that's the way TxDOT is contracting it. So I think that's the best and most efficient way to deliver that complex project.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Stanley.
I've probably got more experience with, the RTC, North Texas Council of Governments, DRMC, because I've been involved since 1998, here in North Texas with that. The contract build system is the fastest, most efficient way. As you see, the sound walls are already, going up, on the rest of the project, almost 4 times faster than what they actually took place here in Garland. We were the first ones that actually had the sound walls put in, but they are expediting getting those in. Here in the last 3 weeks, I've talked to both Bill Hale and to Mo Bird, the district engineer, and the engineer for all of the district engineers out of Boston, Bill Hale. And they're saying everything is exactly on track. The funding is there, and they project no delays in getting this started as early as this fall.
Thank you, sir. Is there another question from the floor? Yes, ma'am.
My question is the same as it was before. School vouchers first, public education.
Start with Councilman Stanley, Councilman Nickerson.
I appreciate that. And having a granddaughter in school, a lot of folks that's been knowing me for, my previous service know that I got a granddaughter that sort of grew up around the council. She goes to Carver Elementary. I don't want any money taken away from what we have. I am a product of the Garland Independent School District myself. Graduated from South Garland. Vouchers, and I think it might have been, Councilman Smith that had the best answer for that, that there's a lot of different plans and ideas about how a voucher system can work, but unless they create a new pool of money that funds those vouchers, I don't want it taken away from my public funds, that funds our public schools, because that's where most of our kids are gonna get educated.
Thank you, Councilman Nickerson.
Well, both my children went through the public school systems here in Texas. We lived just north of Houston during that period in the Waller School District. And I did sit on a bond committee for the Waller School District back in those days. I believe in public education. I think it can be and is probably the finest way to deliver education to as many children as possible. But I think the school system also has some work to do, and we have to really look hard at how we're gonna finance the districts across the state moving forward. It's a challenge. Right now, they take up around 54% of your taxes, where the city's around 16.5%, 17%. The county's about the same. So we wanna make sure those taxes are used efficiently for our children, so that we can get the best education that we can for them. So I think I'm not a fan of a lot of alternative educational ways, but I am a fan of efficiently delivered educational process with the public school system, and we can do better.
All right. All right, thank you, sir. Is there another question from the floor? If not, we'll come back to our panelists. Mr. Ellis and then Dr. Johnson.
Okay, in reference to the bond package, Proposition D is for Parks and Recreations, 117 million. What will you do to ensure the Gale Fields Recreation Center gets the second gym and swimming pool the city promised back in the 1990s?
We'll start with Councilman Stanley, go to Councilman Nickerson.
Well, there's a list of priorities that was included in that bond package. As being on the bond committee as well as an appointee of Mayor Dotson, we got to see that $1.2 billion in different needs for the city. parks, have been greatly neglected, and it's not the park department that was deficient in doing anything. They can only do what the city council funds them to do. You know, we have a lot of Band-Aids on a lot of projects. As far as the Gale Fields, that's right down the street from where I grew up for 22 years. It needs to be completed. Hollowball Field, Recreation Center, it needs to be completed. You know, there's funding in the bond program to do a lot of completion projects that should have been completed when these projects were first built. And it passed, and if I do get back on the council, that is one of my priorities is finish what was started before.
Thank you, Councilman Nickerson.
The bond program is going to be a major task that we all will have on council, moving forward. To properly make sure that the systems are delivered and the projects get completed and begun on time, they need to be managed. We can have a plan, but if you can't execute it, you're not gonna be successful. To make sure that we do deal with the issues at parks, which have a lot of needs, as well as across the bond issue, we've gotta be able to execute the program. And that's one reason why I said before the bond program started that I would not be in favor of one if we couldn't come up with a plan to execute it. And inside that bond program, there is funding for support for operations and deliverability of those by consultants and engineers. I believe that's the way to make sure we can get parks taken care of as well as all the other needs that we have in the city.
Thank you, sir. Just a follow-up, 30-second response. Follow-up to that question is, specifically, regarding the Gale Fields Recreation Center. Money was bought from the 90s for the property, then we received the center. Specifically, what will you do, if elected, to ensure the second gym is added to Gale Fields and the swimming pool that was promised by the city is added to Gale Fields? Councilman Nickerson, Councilman Stanley.
Well, I think that gets back to if the bond program is passed and just what phases of it are passed. We may have to, if some are not passed, then we would have to refocus on the remaining projects. What I think we need to do is focus on making sure we complete the programs that were approved by the voters. And our job as council would be to make sure that happens. I, for one, want to propose a subcommittee made up of 3 council members that focuses on just bond oversight throughout the process. I think that's one way to get focus on the program.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Stanley.
As I said in my original statement, that any projects that were, left pending that still hadn't been complete, whether it's still money left over from 97, 2004, or this bond package, that all projects get brought forward and completed. The people voted on them in 97, 04, and hopefully, this year as well, that, they have expectations and they are to be built. I don't want to create additional levels of oversight in other projects, because a lot of the projects already that are in the bond program, the facilities, is 2 to 3 times the expense that the private sector pays, and I don't want to create more.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Johnson, we'll come to you for your question, Dr. Johnson.
How will you balance adhering to the federal and state legislation that places employees of the city at risk? Legislation that places Garland first responders at risk, legislation that expands the duties of local law enforcement.
Start with Councilman Stanley, Councilman Nickerson.
Can I get a clarification? What do you mean legislation that puts the first responders at risk?
How will you balance adhering to the federal and state legislation? Is that, there must be some system set up within the city.
Further that, to Dr. Johnson, legislation comes down from Washington, D.C. about immigration.
Yes.
Local law enforcement already have their duties, have their priorities. So when legislation comes out of D.C. overriding what's already in place at the local level, what will you do to ensure that our local law enforcement, local first responders do not have to adhere to what comes from D.C. Because of someone's pet peeve?
Well, if it's law, we don't have a choice but to follow what the feds and what the state legislatures pass and what is actually signed into law. There's a lot in, now when it comes to rules and regulations, a lot of times, the bureaucracies create, guidelines for you to follow. Those are not ordained in law, but if it's law, we have to get into compliance with law, whether it's immigration, whether it's something to do with our fire department. But, we don't have the luxury of saying, well, we don't agree with that law, so we're gonna, it's just like speeding down the road. Well, I think the speed limit on the street out here should be 50, not 30. We have laws and we have to follow them. So, as long as they're passed by Congress and signed by the president, or passed by our legislature and signed by the governor, we'll have to figure out a way to fit it into what we're already doing to be the most effective that we can be within the guidelines of the law.
Councilman Nickerson. You may have a second. Councilman Nickerson.
Yes, I think the best way to deal with legislation or laws that come down from higher up is to be more proactive and get out ahead of those kinds of requirements and try to advocate early for more self-rule and local rule at home. I believe the closest you get to the citizens, the better you can rule your city and manage your city. And so we try to keep the laws as local as we can. Of course, there are certain areas that that the state has jurisdiction over, the federal government would have jurisdiction over. But I think where we can, we need to work hard to make sure that the regulations and legislation that is coming through from the state or feds has, at least we have been heard and we've had input into that process and be proactive about it.
Thank you. All right, questions coming from the
agreement has it.
Are you facilitating too? Okay. All right, we're gonna go to these now, Mr. Freeman.
So, does the federal override the state in terms of the laws, in terms of recognition? Yes. Or, and in some instances, for example, with the marijuana, some states would allow marijuana to, be sold or whatever, and the federal law against it. So what do you recognize?
All right, we'll go to Councilman, now, that's gonna be a follow-up to this question. We'll go to Councilman Nickerson, 30 seconds, Councilman Stanley, 30 seconds, Councilman Nickerson, 30 seconds, then I have a follow-up for you.
Okay, sir. In some instances, there's federal law because being immigration, that is one of the responsibilities of the federal government. The states, they do play a part in that, of which, the cities and county governments, have their part in that as well. We have to rely on, our city attorney here at the city level and our attorney general at the state level to say, yes, we do have to comply with this aspect of federal law, but there are other things that with states' rights, that the state sets the precedent of, and the laws about what we do or do not have to follow.
Councilman Nickerson.
Well, once again, I'm for advocating on both a national and regional or state level where we can. We have membership in certain city organizations and national organizations that try to advocate for us at the federal and state levels. And I think what we need to do is remain participatory in those organizations so that we can get our voices heard at both those levels, because they're quite different and they need focused oversight on them to make sure that we can try to keep as much of our home rule home and not let the feds of the states legislate over us.
All right, and then follow, and you guys do know that you have the NAACP function, 1954 Brown versus Board, feds say one thing, states and cities refuse to do so.
Yes.
How do we balance that? Right, you have the feds making law, but the local level, so how do we balance that? We'll start with Councilman Nickerson, Councilman Stanley, 30-second response.
Well, we have a lot of that ongoing now with certain cities in the country that are not adhering to certain immigration requirements at the federal level. I think if we are not careful, we can be a country that begins to not follow the rule of law, and that's what we need to be aware of. But at the same time, I just feel like if we can work within the law and keep it as local as possible, that's the best avenue to address local issues. So whether it's drugs or whether it's immigration.
Thank you, Councilman Nickerson. Councilman Stanley.
In all this stuff, it can't just be done with advocacy. You can talk yourself to death, but you can't get anything accomplished sometimes. What you gotta do is if your community has a belief that, you know, you do agree with this law or don't agree with that law, if the majority says, we don't agree with this, you take that position, and then you work with your state and federal officials to change the law. If everybody's accepting to have the financial play, and typically it is a financial repercussion, because the federal government and state government, you know, they dangle control with purse strings. So if you're willing to take that hit and work for, changing the law.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, we're gonna start with our 1 minute closing. I think we started with Councilman Nickerson, with his, so we'll go back with our 1 minute closing, Councilman Stanley, then Councilman Nickerson with our 1 minute closing statement, please.
Well, I had about a 5-minute closing statement prepared, but, again, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Thanks, to the NAACP for hosting one of these events again this year. With my first 4 years of service, one thing I did learn, I started stuff my first year on council that still has not come to fruition. The things that are going on in District 3 right now, most of them actually started 3 or 4 years ago, not in the last 2 years. So what I want to do is pick up, and in a lot of instances, pick up where I left off, because there are still a lot of projects that I began 4 years ago that I would like to see to fruition. Hopefully with the support of the community, throughout, from Broadway, Centerville, all the way out to Harbor Point, that, the people will, continue to support me and, put me back in office to represent both the district and the city of Garland, in North Texas. I appreciate your time. Please, make sure everybody knows April 22nd through April 30th is early voting, election day, May 4th. I ask for your vote.
Thank you, Councilman Stanley. Councilman Nickerson.
Well, I'm not sure what my opponent's referring to as projects that were started. There were none started in Garland in District 3 until I came there 2 years ago. But what I'm really here about is serving the citizens and trying to make sure we get our services that the citizens want. We've done things like try to find where we can get grocery stores and that's a tough one to solve. We did a 20 grocery store study to try to find out if we could get folks interested in that. That hadn't been done out there before. We brought money into the city at the Rose Hill development. That hadn't been done except in the last 2 years. I solved the Eastern Hills Country Club problem with a development that's going to be very unique and very positive for the city and for the district. That hadn't been done before. We've improved the roads to the extent that we've beginning to see a change in our conditions locally. That hadn't been done before. I've improved the police service. We're now the 9th safest city in the United States. That's because we're funding their services.
Thank you, Councilman Nickerson.
That hadn't been done before.
Thank you so very, very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, District 3 candidates, Councilman Nickerson and Councilman Stanley. Let's give them a